It makes it more authentic, I think.
Oh man.
I don't know if I've ever spoken into like an official microphone.
Yeah, so
I feel like I'm just gonna like yell loudly for no reason or something.
No, I can help you out. But yeah, just scoot forward, and then as long as you're sitting like fairly close to the water, it'll be all right.
Sounds good.
And it's a decent microphone, so you don't have to worry about anything. Oh yeah. Nervous.
Kinda.
Excited.
I don't know what to expect.
Me neither.
That's terrifying. I feel like you should know what's going on.
And we're live.
Hi.
What's up, everybody? I'm here with the one, the only, the Jess Baker.
That is me.
How's your day been, Jess?
It's been good. Yeah. Happy to be here.
So you work super early. What do you do again?
I do. I work for the Navy, not in the Navy.
Yeah.
Civilian. And I do modeling and simulation stuff. So sit behind a computer at a desk all day.
What do you what modeling and simulation?
So computer models, we make models of weapons and ships and all that stuff, and then you run them against each other, and then see who wins. I mean, the idea is to try to see...
That's amazing!
Yeah, it's cool stuff. The idea is ultimately you can test stuff on a computer way cheaper and way quicker than you could do in water.
How much of this are you allowed to talk about? Can I dive deep?
Not too deep.
Okay. I mean, but are you simulating like what it looks like for a submarine to attack a ship, or a ship attack a submarine, or like how this works against that, and you're just simulating like battles?
Yeah, so there's people that do every level. I do more nitty gritty because I have a science background.
Yeah.
And there's people that do like big, theater wide.
Oh, okay.
Battles, and I'm sort of more in a detail.
Like, what does that mean? You're on the soldier level versus the...
Yeah, versus like the big army battle. So I do a little piece, and then it goes into a bigger piece and a bigger piece.
Can you talk about the little piece you do?
Weapons. The cool stuff, things that go boom.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you create models around how your specific weapon works in various combat environments.
Yeah. And the idea is to inform the warfighter. If I see this coming at me, what do I do? Or how to,
Oh, okay. So you take your models and simulations and then you create strategic policy.
Yeah.
And then the hope, fingers crossed, is that distills down into training commands and gets implemented in the fleet on a tactical level.
Right. Or advising people, what we need to build or what we need to do, advising the big Navy, all the stuff that they're doing, they're testing in water, doing all these runs and things, but you can just do it way cheaper, and you can do things like, what if I put this crazy propeller on something that maybe isn't physical yet, but you can try it out on a computer, click a button, that you couldn't do in water.
That's pretty cool. So you're on the side of things, because I would imagine in this world there's a lot of just programmers who create, like they don't really care so much about what it is they're programming, they're just making like an amazing video game.
Yeah.
And then there's people who interpret the data. So I would imagine there's a lot of people who, whatever, they don't care specifically about the weapons or the strategery.
Yeah. So I'm trying to be the border between those people. So I work with the like amazingly brilliant coding programmers, and then I work with the big Navy folk, and I try to talk between the two.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Both,
And it's just for Navy people then?
Yeah, so I'm just Navy.
Does your world do like Marines and Army and Air Force, or not that Air Force really has much to simulate. It's really easy to simulate the effectiveness of a nap. So
I love that. So I have no military background.
Yeah.
I just found this job, and it's been so fun to I feel like I can pick on the Air Force because I know that's what you Navy
that's
folks
what you do.
Yeah. And it's so fun
swinging.
to
When
be
in
a
doubt,
part of it.
make fun of the Air Force. Like you can always make fun of any branch that you're not a part of.
Yeah.
But default is
Air
the
Force
Air Force.
is
And what I found is like it's all about attacking, right? Because if you don't attack, then they're gonna attack you, and there's nothing worse than an Air Force person trying to make fun of the Air Force. It's like, come on.
Yeah, jeez.
We do your job better than you do your job. Like our pilots
we
land
have
on
that
moving
too.
ships, right? Yeah. But it is a joke, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Except for West Point, like the Naval Academy West Point thing, that's legit.
That's a real battle, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to, I go to this new church called King's Church, and there's a guy who's there, West Point graduate, his wife's a West Point graduate, and they have a son at West Point. I was like, man, I might have to change churches.
Yeah, this is oof.
I don't know if God likes them. Obviously, that's a joke.
Yeah. Stating that.
I feel like you have to say that sometimes.
Just so people know, yeah. But yeah, so that's been the cool side of things, learning this whole thing. So yeah, there's modeling across all the different branches. And I work with other branches a little bit, but...
So not being affiliated, or not being, coming from a military branch, do you find that making fun of the Air Force, does it work? Is it enjoyable for you?
Yeah, other than I don't want to say something that's
you don't want to cross the line.
Yeah.
You want to rib, you don't want to punch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Poke fun in a very lighthearted way.
Yeah.
But I understand I have not paid my dues to be able to really poke fun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance.
Yeah.
Do you find that working so closely with military, without military experience is, just describe how that works.
Yeah, it's tough. Especially first coming in, everyone jokes about the acronyms, but that is not, it's a real thing. Everybody speaks in code, and I don't know what any of these words mean.
Yeah.
And I remember, my first day on the job, some poor guy sitting next to me, could just see the blank stare on my face, and would just, translate all the acronyms for me.
What is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just the whole world. I work, thankfully, not thankfully, but I work with a lot of civilians, so I'm not the only one. But even out of the civilians, 2/3 of them are retired military.
Right.
So there's not a ton of us that, are just coming in fresh.
Yeah.
But, I don't have, I think my grandfather was in the Army, but other than that, I don't have a ton of military in my family. So it was a whole new world.
Yeah.
And it gave me an incredible respect. I respected people before, but I never experienced it the same way.
Yeah.
And
well, sometimes experience with Navy people can lead you to the other end of the conclusion. It's man, these people suck.
I guess I probably see them in their best. I see them at the workplace and not at a bar after a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the stuff that these people know just from, I came in right out of grad school and was feeling a little pretentious.
Yeah.
And these guys can blow me out of the water on all kinds of things, and they don't have degrees, right? But they just have experience.
Yeah.
And
it really speaks to the value of just experience, life experience, and then experience doing the things that are being done. I was in a similar situation, minus the pretension. No, I'm just kidding. But coming out of college, you go to I selected Submarine, so you go to nuclear power school. You basically go to a year of schooling, and you learn all the theory and practical application of nuclear reactors, and then you show up to the submarine, and it's a totally different reactor, so you need to learn it. And technically, on paper, you're a division officer, and on paper, the division officer is in charge of the chief in the division, but the chief, so my first job was the electrical assistant, so I was the EA, and the electrical assistant is, the EDIV chief, and then within the electrical division, you have first class petty officers and second class petty officers, and all the way down to the seamen, the fresh out of high school, fresh out of boot camp people who are they're gonna be EDIVers one day.
Right.
And so showing up and on paper being the leader of those people, but really just learning what the role of an officer is, learning how the submarine works, learning how the chief works, learning is such it's really hard.
Yeah, it's humbling.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And because you're gonna make mistakes, and you're gonna accidentally go behind the chief's back, or you're gonna whatever here, and you're gonna give the chief too much leeway, and then the captain's gonna talk to you, and it's just it's just figuring out your role in that dynamic is so I had a really hard time with that, for sure.
The whole chain of command thing.
Yeah.
In the past, I've had supervisors and bosses and other things, but I've never had that concept of you have to go to person A before you go to person B, and if you go over that, they're gonna get. It's just it's a whole new thing, and I see the purpose of it. I can also see some flaws in it sometimes, but it's just it's new territory, and so
it's you're learning a whole new rule book.
Yeah.
And I went to the Naval Academy, and so in theory I should have known the rule book.
I would assume they drill that in.
But you don't know the rule book until you're in that community, until you're in that environment, and then there's some common sense stuff like I'm gonna correct an EDIV chief on his knowledge of electrical systems on the submarine. Like, no, Chief, I think your maintenance strategy here is fundamentally flawed, right? That's silly.
Yeah.
But then it's also kind of awkward as you get more and more senior. It's figuring out, okay, now I understand my role. It's like that first time you battle the chief, and you're like, oh man,
yeah.
uh-oh, how's this gonna end?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah, or the first time you just let the chief walk over you and you don't battle the chief,
right.
And then now you're like, oh well, man, I guess I'm just a weak person. It's tough, but it's I really like having that experience so young, so young in life, because it forces you to really learn and think about, you know, all of those angles. I remember leaving the submarine and significantly questioning what skills I had in life. I remember I had to jump my car because the battery was dead, and I called an electrician from the boat because I had no clue how to do it.
But you know how to find the right person. That's
yeah, yes. And like the whole thing on the boat is, you know, officers don't touch, they lead. It's like if you see a screw in the floorboard loose, you find the person whose job it is to tighten the screw, and like you just can't screw it. And it feels so awkward to find you screwing the screw board, and I watch you do it.
Yeah.
It's like, look at me, my authority. But that's also that's how it works in life, you know. If the captain walks by and tightens screw boards, then everyone thinks, oh well, the captain tightened screw boards.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
That's an interesting. I think about going. So we have the exact opposite experience, I guess.
Yeah.
So I went into it, and you
Right.
went into the civilian, and how that changes stuff. And
yeah. So what's your experience with that, like that dynamic as without the military experience? Because I also think without the military experience is valuable experience. Like without coming in with all of the brainwashing, for lack of a better word. Like you have a more fresh perspective, I would imagine.
Yeah. Just I guess like. Not being intimidated to go to somebody 2 levels ahead of you. You know, you can go to them and you're not just, it's not such a strict chain of command. I think things, maybe different offices have things differently, but, you know, there's not like a rule and you just follow this rule by this book.
Yeah.
You know, things can all be a little more loose in the civilian world.
Yeah.
You can just screw a thing into the floorboard and no one's going to freak out next time you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that makes sense. So sort of the value of your perspective is not as blindly tied to the military things.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, my building is sort of half and half. It's a good mix,
Yeah.
and the military people are very understanding, especially those of us that are just civilians
Right.
that don't have. I mean, I sort of expected them to be really hard on me for not following by the book, whatever I was supposed to follow, or using the wrong acronym or something. And I really like working in that setting because I'm good at following. If I'm told the rule, I will follow it.
Yeah.
I'm good at that. But so it's been a good setting. I think it's a good setting for me, but I can see some people might not quite mix with it well.
Yeah, I was not good at the here's the rule, follow it. That was not my strong suit. And that might be why I didn't do terribly well at the Naval Academy. I think that might be another story. I don't know. But yeah, I'm always fascinated by, you know, office dynamics or work dynamics, and you know, even in the gym, I'm fascinated by that dynamic. You know, it's really, I never really thought about leadership as something that is a skill set until really I left the Navy, which is the great irony of my life.
Because that was your training.
Yeah, exactly. At the Naval Academy, they're like, this is leadership, and then everyone I knew at the Navy, not everyone. There was one officer at the Naval Academy that I respected.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that a common experience at the academy?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That was my experience.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just my perspective. Maybe I was young and immature and I thought I knew better than everybody. But I'm fairly confident. Categorically, I met some terrible leaders.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I sort of learned leadership by like what not to do. But I didn't think that was leadership. I thought it was like rebelliership.
Yeah.
It was really weird. And then I got to the real Navy, and the real Navy was filled with real people, like normal humans who were much more rational. Who I guess the difference was at the Naval Academy you're playing like pretend military. Mm-hmm. You're not actual military, even though you technically are. But on the submarine you're playing real military.
Yeah, this is it.
The stakes are real.
Yeah.
Like I understand what not listening to the captain does to a submarine. Not that I ever did that. But anyway, yeah. So, do you find that? Did you have a non-military office experience before this?
Not really.
Okay.
So I just had grad school,
Okay.
and so I've had supervisors and coworkers
Yeah,
in
yeah.
some form. But academia is also like a whole other beast. So I didn't have like a formal work
Yeah.
experience elsewhere.
Yeah.
But and I only had this one experience in the military, so it's hard to say.
Right.
But all of the high-ranking military people in my building, or that I've interacted with from afar, because I don't have the seniority to be talking to these guys and close up, are amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you can tell how they got to where they got to.
For sure.
Because they're like so good and passionate. And
Yeah. I mean, that was my experience outside of the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
For sure. Outside of the Naval Academy, I met the best humans literally I've ever met.
Yeah.
And they're incredible. And their impact on my life was 100% positive.
Right.
It's just weird how places pile bad people. And maybe I just had a really bad experience. But, you know, I don't want to sit here and
Might
try
have
to
been a rough
justify it.
couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, it's what level of leadership are the people that you're talking about that you understand why they're so great? Are they like generals?
The head of our
admirals?
building is admirals, 2-star,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
a couple captains and things around.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're that perfect kind of leader that you don't even know they're leading. They're building everyone else up around them, so you're not even.
Yeah.
You don't notice they're leading until you realize like everyone around them's really successful all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, so hard to do.
Yeah.
And
That's a really good point. Yeah, the idea of like great leaders don't like you almost don't notice the fact that they're leading
Yeah.
in a way. That's really interesting. How do you think they do that?
That's a good question. I think it's being aware. I think when you get to that level of seniority, it's got to be so hard to not have such an ego. I mean, everyone stands when you walk into a room, and
Yeah.
you know, so to somehow, maybe it's the mindfulness and other stuff too, I'm not sure, but to somehow be conscious enough to, you know, not have that ego and to support the people around you and call other people out when they did good work. I mean, I don't know how they do that. Hopefully I'll figure it out someday. That sounds
The
useful.
ego thing is really interesting. So you think, the people that you notice that you respect in your office don't carry that ego that you might imagine one would have when, you know, attention on deck.
Yeah.
Sir,
yeah.
yes, sir. Everything you say, sir.
Yeah, you've got people, you have a staff following you around. Yeah. How do you still, you know, smile and say hi, good morning to like a schmuck like me walking down the hall? Like, it blows my mind.
Yeah, my experience is they don't see you as schmucks. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
but
how do you not?
I feel like if I was in that place, I'd be like, Lillings, what are you doing?
Well, that's a good point. That's a really good point. And it might be the difference in perspective of how you see your role. Because if you're new into the workforce, you only really understand your role and maybe your boss's role, like truly.
Yeah.
You know, you almost have to do a job before you can comprehend what that job is. And so, you know, like I never really thought about the role of a captain or the role of a department head until it was like, oh, well, my next job is going to be department head. Do I want that role? Like,
Yeah.
do I want to do that? And my consciousness around what that is never really, you know, matured, I guess, until I was senior enough to sort of see it across the horizon. But in my little world, as being a junior officer, I knew the significance of a chief, and I knew the significance of a third-class petty officer, and I knew the significance of my messenger when I was the officer of the deck. Like, the lowest guy on the boat. He's literally not qualified to do anything. He got out of boot camp yesterday. The first thing you qualify on the boat is to steer the ship, which sounds like it's a really important, it's certainly important.
Yeah.
But literally all you're doing is I tell you to go to 355 and you keep it on 355. And then I say turn left and you turn left. Like, that's your job, right? And it's a really important job, but it doesn't take much skill. And the messenger's job is below that. Okay. So the messenger's job on the submarine is literally to wake people up, make sure they're awake for their watch, and to get people coffee.
No.
And to find people.
Yeah.
That's it. Hey, find this person. Have them report to this room. Okay. Because there's no like pager system.
Yeah.
And so I knew how important those people were, right?
Right.
And so did the captain, because the captain was a JO also. And I think the best leaders retain that perspective
Yeah.
of where they were when they relied on that person. You know, like I relied on a chief, so now I fully understand what the role of a chief is. I guess maybe it's a little empathy, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's that remembering, because
Yeah.
like knowing, you know, where you were back in the day, because nobody started, you know, as a captain. Like, you
Right.
started somewhere else and you got there.
Started from the bottom, now I'm here.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it. We figured it out.
Yeah,
we solved leadership.
Done.
Remember where you came from.
Yeah.
Do you are you in charge of anyone?
No,
No.
not really. And I'm deciding. I've only been in the workforce really for like 2 years now, so
Yeah.
I'm in a couple of years. I'll start to decide if I want to go into like a management route.
Yeah.
Or not, and
That's
I
interesting.
don't know. But it's sort of that point of at some point I'll start to decide if those are paths I want to take.
Yeah. Yeah. And at that point you'll start to like wrap your head around what it means. Like,
Yeah.
what is my job again?
Yeah,
Do I really want to be that person who does those things?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, because I went to the Naval Academy. My dad went. My sister went.
Yeah.
I went. I didn't really even wrap my head around completely the idea that, like, really what an officer in the Navy was. Like, I majored in computer science, and I was like, oh, well, when I get into the Navy, I'll work on computers. Nope. It's not what you do.
Not how that works.
Nope. Yeah, that's. What are your thoughts on, like leading up? If that makes sense. Like leading up the chain of command.
Yeah, we've actually had like.
Training on that.
No, like meetings discussing how to like flip the pyramid and have, leadership and ideas go up. Sounds like a great idea, but it's got to there's got to be somebody at the top that's willing to hear from the bottom. And again, I think good leadership does that.
Yeah.
But bad leadership doesn't. And so you can't change that from the bottom. I think it has to be.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of reading. Are you familiar with Jocko Willink?
I don't think so.
He talks about extreme ownership. He's a Navy SEAL, and he talks about how the Navy SEALs lead, how the greatest teams on the planet execute leadership. And it's really fascinating. I joke about Jocko because he's kind of this character who's like this amazingly inspirational, amazing human, and he's so like black and white. He's like, wake up at 4:30, train, do your work. Like Jocko, what are your thoughts on email? And his answer is reply or delete. It's like very military.
Yep.
But he offered some perspective on leadership that I thought was really interesting, and it's the idea that you need to cultivate command buy-in, and a lot of times subordinates, like I was certainly guilty of this in the Submarine at the Naval Academy. Like I didn't understand why it is that you wanted me to do something, and so I kind of rebelled against everything that you wanted me to do. Like, oh, you want me to cut my hair and shine my shoes and do this? Well, screw that, I'm not going to do any of it. And then I wondered why they didn't take my ideas seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jocko's point was buy into all the little things, so that like basically make your disagreements matter.
Right.
If you're disagreeing on everything, then your disagreements don't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it seems reasonable.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that.
That's cool. So do you see, like how do you think of your job more as like military or more civilian, or like how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as part of the fifth branch of the military? I'm gonna offend some Coast Guard people. The sixth branch, I'm gonna offend some. Do you see yourself as the military support, like part of the team, or is it just a job?
Yeah, we really do. Like they really emphasize that we're part of the Navy. We're one and the same, and we work for them. And they, for all intents and purposes, my thing says I'm paid by the Navy. Like that's what I signed up for. So and all the military people emphasize that.
That's cool.
And so I definitely see that, and that's why I love that I can, in a tiny little way, and all the, like the, I don't want to say pomp and circumstance, I don't mean it in a showmany way, but all the ceremony around the military is amazing, and it's fascinating, and sometimes it's like way overkill, but I really enjoy it.
Me too!
And like didn't know any of it. Thank goodness one of my supervisors told me about, was it colors, where they raise the flag, like, I didn't know I was supposed to stop, like nobody in my outside life, I would just keep walking, like they're playing the national, like supposed to stop, and I wouldn't know that, and like, there's so many things that are cool, that are fascinating.
Yeah, I completely agree. Again, after leaving the Naval Academy, I realized the importance of some of these like ceremonial things, right? It's to me, so every time you walk across the brow of a submarine, so the submarine's on the pier, and then they lower a brow, and the brow's how you get to the boat. You stop halfway through, you salute the flag, you stand at attention, you salute the flag, and then you get back on. And it's like, you know, when you're really busy and you're walking across the bow like 3 or 4 times, but then it serves as a constant reminder of why you're there, you know, and I think it's a unifying rally cry for the purpose and the mission, because we can disagree on policy of coffee cups and cup holders. We don't disagree on the policy of, you know, defending America, because that's what we signed up for, that sort of concept. So I like some of the pomp stance for that regard, because it reinforces ideals that I think are really important to be reinforced. And honestly, I don't have those in my civilian life, and I feel less connected in a way. I don't know.
So I'm not in the military, but I do feel connected to it in a way that I absolutely wouldn't have had I not been working where I am. And I really appreciate getting to start to know some of these things and be aware of some of these things. And
have you found some of the more odd traditions?
Probably. I don't know.
Like challenge coins.
Oh yeah, I haven't gotten a coin, but I've heard all about them.
Yeah, those are kind of cool.
Yeah,
I thought about making an old city challenge coin.
Oh, I like it.
I like it. Pretty sweet. I don't know how many people would get it, but yeah.
Yeah, my building has some, so I feel like I could potentially get one someday.
Yeah, and then
cool.
You can like make a rack with all the challenge coins.
Love that stuff.
People can judge your worth based on your collection of challenge coins. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
So that's been neat.
What's your favorite? Have you been into the real Navy? Have you been to the fleet?
They did a thing where we went down to like Virginia Beach. It was like, you know, all the civilians come see what a boat looks like really newbie stuff. I didn't get to go on a sub, and I was so bummed.
You should be.
I really wanted to. We went on an aircraft carrier, which was cool, but there was no planes at the time, so just like a big empty hangar. And they were like doing a lot of painting. It didn't look fun. Yeah, that's all the Navy. That's all you do. Like if you enlist in the Navy, you are signing up to be a painter. Basically. I think the aircraft carrier is, I guess probably the coolest thing we saw. But we got to see a handful of ships, which was neat. But otherwise, I really just sit behind a desk most of the time. So I haven't gotten to like really see anything. And they keep talking about there's like chances that maybe we could get out on like a ship for a couple days or something. Yeah. And I would love to do that if they let me. I'm not sure about a sub. I think it would be really fun because women can go on subs now. I think it would be really fun. But I also think the second I realized I was underwater, I might like mentally break down. It's weird. You think that you might, but you probably won't. Right. And for the record, women were allowed to ride submarines in the past. Okay. So like we all the time had civilian riders, and female midshipmen would come on, I didn't know that. And civilian, intelligence people would ride with us. It's just they weren't allowed to serve on. Gotcha. Which now they can. Yeah. Which is cool. So here's my other question. Yeah. Do you guys really hate those riders? Like, because you're like in their way, you're taking their bunk, like. It depends. Yeah. It depends. There's certainly rider etiquette. Okay. Which, if they don't, they need to. That needs to be training. Yeah. Right. Because, on a fast attack submarine, about a third, maybe sometimes as much as 2/3 of the crew is hot racking. So 2 people share 3 beds, and the most junior of which alternates back and forth between the bed when it's empty. And so, you're putting more people into that situation. But whatever. Submariners know that, especially when you're junior, that that's part of the deal. Yeah. Whatever. And so there's riders who and also it largely depends what you're there for. Like if you're there to learn about the submarine and to experience the military, and literally all you do is sleep, watch movies, and eat the good pizza right when it comes out, well, that's not good etiquette. Right. But if you're going out and you're engaging with the guys and you're like, hey, can you tell me about the torpedo? Like, most people love to talk about what they do. Okay. And so if you're engaging and if you're like passionate about what people's, you can be too passionate. Like, who's this? Settle down. Come on. Just chill. But in general, if you're there doing the job that you were put there to do and you're doing it, respect. Okay. That's cool. All right.
But outside of that, yeah, never be the first one in line for food.
Yeah.
Like always just wait.
That seems fair.
Like basically when there's no line for food, like all right, cool.
Yeah, then you can wander over.
Yeah, and it's very like prison-y, where it's like I'm not sure where to sit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the chief's table, and that's that table, and you know. But basically, you get your food, you sit down, you eat, and then you leave. You don't
Just don't take up space. You're not.
Yeah, that's it. It's the people who eat and lounge and talk, and then yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, no one likes that.
Yeah, I think it's like any normal scenario. I think if you go to any environment, humble, without ego, respecting everybody, you're gonna do well.
You should be okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I think. What else can you do on a submarine to really piss people off?
Yeah, I guess that's the biggest fear is like, going on and having everyone be like, geez, we're just entertaining people. We have like real work to be doing. Go away.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a strange, and it also depends on which side of the crew you're invited to be a part of, because they have a the officers and the enlisted. On a submarine, it's still very much divided, very much intentionally so. And if you go and if you ride as an officer, then you eat in the wardroom, and that has its own etiquette. And you don't, like, if you're an officer type person, you don't want to eat in the crew's mess, because now you're taking up space that a crew could get, and the crew can't eat in the wardroom. And what are you doing? Like, that's rude. And then also it's the job of a cook to bring the food out and serve you the food, and you have to let them do their job.
Mm-hmm.
If you do their job, well, now, like, what's their role?
Yeah.
And that's a very awkward thing to like get used to getting served.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
Like, we weren't allowed to do our own laundry.
Really?
Yeah. It's super awkward.
That's wild.
Yeah, we had to give our laundry bags to the enlisted. They do it.
Oh.
It's weird.
Yeah,
It's
that
weird.
sounds really.
Yeah, I mean, you get used to it real quick. Like, don't get me wrong. Just, yeah. So you'd ride a submarine though? You'd
I think
overcome
so.
your
I
fears?
mean, if I got a chance, I think, and I have no idea if I could ever get a chance, but I think I'll try it. But I do really think that I might, like, I don't know, in the first 5 minutes, I might just like lose my mind and it wouldn't go over well.
Yeah. The hardest thing to get over is the fact that you have an absolute finite number of places that you can go.
Yeah, you
right?
can't get away. You can't.
If there's people eating crew's mess, and if the wardroom's occupied, and if this place is occupied, and if that place is occupied, that's it. You're standing in the hallway.
That's crazy. Yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah, not a feeling I've ever had the rest of my life.
Yeah. But it's fun. You get used to it. You can wrap your head around almost anything.
Yeah.
I mean, if I plucked you right now and dropped you in the middle of your hardest year of grad school, you'd probably be like, I don't know if I could do that again. But you could, with enough preparation and mental.
Yeah, if you had to. That's fair.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Maybe you buckle and crumble under pressure.
Yeah, just crawl into a ball, call it a day.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we got. No, I'm just kidding. So, what'd you study in grad school?
Physics.
Physics.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Really?
Physics.
Yep.
Grad school was undergrad physics too?
Yep. Undergrad was math and physics.
Wow.
I like school a lot. I was good at that. I'm not so sure about working or anything else, but
Physics. I liked physics in high school. I did not like physics in college. I took physics 2 twice, and I got D's both times.
Did you need a higher grade to pass? I guess not.
No, well, yeah. So I was on restriction for a longer bit, and when you're on restriction over the summer, which I was, then you either are attached to this company called Transient Company, which means you stand about 12 hours of watch a day, or you sign up for summer school, and then you're attached to the summer school people, much more relaxed. Like, you stand watch like once a week at school, and then you're just in your room or whatever. And so I did not want to be in Transient Company. I had to get out of it as fast as I could. And the only class I could take, you're only allowed to take classes you failed or got D's in, or a class that would put you ahead. The semester I was there was no option for classes to get me ahead, so I had to retake a class, and the only class that I could retake was Physics 2. No good.
Still, second time around wasn't any better.
It's like electromagnetic magnetic
Yeah.
fields and the right hand rule.
Yeah, I love
and-
it.
Did not like it.
Oh, it's good stuff.
Yeah. So physics.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really
I liked
cool.
it.
And then before that, you were a gymnast, right?
Yes. That was my athletic beginnings.
Maybe that's why you like physics. You're like, why? How do I get higher and
Yeah.
fall slower?
And do all that. Yeah.
How'd you get into gymnastics?
I was told that it was like a parent and taught class when I was 2. I don't have any memories before gymnastics.
Right.
So as far as I know, I have always done it.
Yeah. It was something same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. So yeah, supposedly it was a parent and taught class, and I took to it. It was. I have an older
Crushed
brother. My dad went with him. He just like sat in the corner.
Yeah.
And I just like ran around like crazy.
That's
Loved
awesome.
It, so.
That's very similar to Jasmine's story, how she got into gymnastics. She was like, they started when I was really young, and my parents said I was really good.
Like that's.
There you
Just
go.
really liked it. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so you started and you basically did it, never looked back?
Yeah. I tried. I did like every kid. I did like all of the sports at some point. I did soccer, and I taught the goalie how to do cartwheels, and then I did basketball, and I was on the sideline teaching people how to do forward rolls, and they're like, fine, we give up. You can just do gymnastics. That's okay.
That's awesome.
I think I made it pretty well known.
That's all you wanted to do?
Yeah, I have absolutely zero skills in the rest of those sports.
What'd you like about gymnastics? Once you started realizing...
Yeah, I mean, I've always been relatively strong. I've never been the, like beam was never my thing. Like, I've never been, like, delicate and dainty, but I could always, like, brute strength through stuff.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I mean, it was a sport that was strong, and you're,
Yeah. A power gymnast.
Yeah, that was more my style. Yeah, I don't know. It was always, I think it fits really well. I'm very competitive, but it's me versus myself. Kind of similar to swimming.
Yeah.
Where, you win when you do your best.
Right.
I've never been good at head-to-head games. I don't have any hand-eye coordination or any of that stuff either, but
Yeah.
I just, like, I played field hockey for a little while, and, like, they'd come at me, and I would just, like, let them have it, because I just, like, I don't...
Not worth it.
Yeah, I just, like, don't have that kind of aggression or whatever it takes. And so I think I really like the personal aspect of it, which is similar to CrossFit, that's why I like CrossFit a lot.
That's a good point.
And all the sports I've done probably since are
Yeah.
similar to that.
Yeah, where you can do poorly overall, but if you do the best that you've ever done, then you're really proud of it.
Yeah, and you beat somebody, like, you win when you did your best.
Right.
Versus, I don't know, this other person taking you out or something. Like, it's,
it's like I did my best and I still got my ACL blown.
yeah. But yeah, it's really you against yourself. If you fall, that's your fault only.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it fits my competitive side really well.
Yeah.
And then I guess I just like the sport. I don't know. I just have always done it, and it just
Yeah. That's cool. Did you enjoy, because the practices are ridiculous, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't say everything's shiny in retrospect.
Of course. Yeah, that's a good point.
But I really don't remember dreading it. And I was never super, super high level, so I didn't have a ton of pressure.
Yeah.
But I did it once I got into like middle school, and then through all of middle school, all of high school, essentially 3 hours a night, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And then meets and stuff for all full day long events on
Yeah.
Sundays. And I liked it.
That's cool. Do you remember liking practice more than the meets? Did you not like the meets? Because it's weird. Everybody's on a different end of the spectrum of where they, like what they liked about the sport. Like some people hate competitions because all the pressure.
Yeah, I always remembered I would do a competition and I'd be so jealous of the girl that was like injured and couldn't compete. It's like, man, they're like so relaxed right now.
They're just chilling.
Life is great.
No stress.
But then when I was that kid, I was so bummed that I wasn't out competing.
Yeah.
And so I think I'd have to say I probably enjoyed the competitions to some extent, but yeah, I don't love just practicing for the sake of practice. I like CrossFit because everything's a competition in CrossFit.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't just do it just for fun.
Right.
I would need to know that I'm training for something. But I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed learning it, and it was also like all kids sport. I mean, all of my friends were from gymnastics.
Yeah.
It was all I spent all my time. So
Yeah, I think that's a lot easier to. It's a lot easier to be engaged in the sport because it's like when you hang out with all your friends, and so it's like, oh, well, do I want to lose all of my friends and quit the sport? No.
Yeah, that was
So
my
you like
goal.
the sport.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and it's easier as a kid because everything else is kind of taken care of for
Yeah.
you. You know, it's like you don't have to worry about dinner or taxes. You know, as much as being a kid sucks, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, not
You
a
know
bad
what I'm
life.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's a good deal.
Yeah, that's I think about that a lot because I definitely did not like practice, but then I really didn't like competitions until like I've talked about this a lot, but I did not, and I've done a lot of work in this regard, but I would get so anxious and so nervous, not about the outcome, but about the place I would have to take myself. Like I would be so afraid of the pain.
Yeah.
That I would psych myself out and I would not go there. Unconsciously or consciously, like I would just, like I'd be standing on the block, dreading the race, and then after the first 25, I'd be like, well, guess it's not my day, you know,
Yeah.
but secretly being like kind of happy that, you
Yeah,
know?
that it passed.
It's a really strange thing about competition, but if I was in the race, if I got past that threshold of, well, it hurts and this is as bad as it's going to hurt, that's when I loved it.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah, you just had to get past that.
Yeah. It's like the thing I was dreading the most is the thing that I enjoyed the most. You know, like that last 25 when it's, or like when you get into the strategy of, you know, like when to make your move, you know, that sort of stuff. And it's just, I don't know, I really like that. I don't know. I think swimming was the wrong sport for me.
I mean, you seem to take to it, so.
I mean, I was good at it.
Yeah.
I'm more of what you were describing in the field hockey example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of the, I will kill you if you take this ball. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I will work as hard as I can for you not to touch this ball.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can have that race. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird. It's weird how, I don't know, what's that all about?
Yeah, it's just a personality thing. I think, some people, thrive off one versus the other. Definitely wasn't my thing.
I really, I want to find out where that comes from. You know, like I want to get.
Yeah, what is it about somebody that takes,
Yeah, and what's better? I don't know.
I don't think either's better. I think it's your personality. There's different personality types, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Sure.
Can't be right. No, I don't know.
So what'd you learn through sports? Like what'd you learn in gymnastics? What did gymnastics teach Jessica Baker?
I mean, I guess you could go lots of ways with that. on the physical side, this is why I think everybody should always start with gymnastics. I mean, just core basic strength. I don't remember learning a pull-up.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, I've always had a strict pull-up.
Yeah.
Which I think there's probably a lot of adults these days that wish they could, keep on, There's
For
a lot of things, I think basic flexibility. I'm certainly not the most flexible person, but I have some base, I think, better than the general population because I trained that for a long time.
Right.
And so I think just that core strength and flexibility and body awareness and knowing it's helped in everything else I want to do. It certainly helps in CrossFit. If somebody says put your hips here, I know where my arms are. Yeah. And I think that basic knowledge transfers to any other physical thing you ever want to do.
Yeah.
So physically, I think it gave me a lot. It set me up for a lot of my future athletic stuff, which I really appreciate. And then, on the bigger picture life side.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely, time management is something that I am huge on, and I, had to come home from school and finish my homework within, an hour. I didn't, goof off after school. I came home, I did my homework, because I had to be done by 4:30, so I could go to practice. And then I'd go to practice, then I'd go home and sleep. So, I think I've learned time management really well.
Like how to structure your day, how to get things done.
Yeah. And I think that's allowed me to do a ton of other stuff. It allowed me to do sports in college, allowed me to do stuff in grad school, it allowed me to have 2 jobs now. And so that's been huge, I think, in my life that most kids, can just come home and goof off for 6 hours and that's fine.
Yeah.
And I learned to do, work smartly with my work, and I think that's helped me through my academics. And then just the general, all childhood sports teaches you dedication and hard work and dealing with other kids and other coaches and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That I grew up with, and I
Right.
I credit gymnastics with a lot of my upbringing, maybe too much, to the point of like my parents and family. I did a lot as well. But it was so much of my childhood and my growth, and I mean, I spent 3 hours a night there every night, so I was there more than I was in my house. My home, and my house.
I lived in Canada.
I essentially did.
Really good.
But yeah, so
that's right. Where'd you grow up?
Northern New York.
Okay.
So southern Canada.
Southern Canada. How far north?
About an hour north of Albany. So.
Saratoga Springs.
Yeah.
Have we
oh
talked
yeah.
about this?
Yeah, right near. So I'm a little north of there, but right near there.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was stationed there for 6 months. I was there the exact winter.
Yeah, not great at that time.
Yeah, the week after the racetrack closed and the week before it opened. Yeah, and when I moved in, it was a nice day, and my house didn't have air conditioning, I don't think, and so I lowered a few windows to let some, like it was chilly, let some cool air in because I was moving, I was sweating a little bit, and then I put all of the windows up except for one. But the blinds, for whatever reason, I don't know why I lowered the upper part of a window, but the blinds were covering the upper part of the window, and I didn't know that.
Oh, no.
I didn't know that, and my downstairs was so cold. It was all winter. My downstairs was just frigid.
So it was open like forever?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was so cold. Then my upstairs was so hot because I kept turning the heat up and up and up. I was like, Jesus, why is it so... I would go downstairs with a coat, I'd bundle up, I'd watch TV or whatever, and then literally I was moving out. And I was checking the apartment the first day I opened the window, and the last day I'm checking my apartment. I was like, Mother, are you kidding me?
That's crazy.
I left the window open all winter.
Yeah.
And I had a roommate. And my roommate didn't catch it either. Like, well, I guess this sucks.
It's much nicer
so
up there
dumb.
with central heating.
Yeah.
And closed windows.
Yeah. I had the best night's sleep I've ever had in my entire life in Saratoga Springs, New York.
Really?
Yeah, there was a power outage.
Oh, okay.
And so my insanely hot upstairs equalized with outdoors because my window was open very quickly. And I piled like 18 blankets on my bed. And you know how like you can make the middle part like where you are warm, but then when you go out it gets really cold, but you kind of like that cold sometimes.
Yeah.
So I was under the blankets, and the pressure from the blankets was really nice. And then whenever I'd get too hot, I would just be like, ping, slide my foot over and be like,
get a little
cold. It was awesome. It was great.
Sounds lovely.
When the heat came back on, I was a little upset.
So you're back to the tropics.
I know. Yeah. I like upstate New York.
Yeah, I love it up there.
Yeah?
I really, really love it, yeah. Not huge for physics jobs. So there's that. But otherwise, I could absolutely live up there still.
There's a lot of people who end up as civilian nuclear people who work on the plants up there that we train on. There's a lot of civilian people who are physics and chemical engineering.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. And mechanical engineering. And as it turns out, computer science.
Yeah.
So, I want to get back to gymnastics, but this physics thing, when you get a master's degree in physics, like, how do you decide the track that you go? Like, why aren't you an astrophysicist? Or like, how does that work? Like, obviously physics is a wide field. What track did you go and why that track?
Yeah, I sort of always stumbled into what I've done.
Yeah.
So, it's worked out well. So my undergrad had this like 5th year free program. So you do 4 years of your undergrad, and then if you've started within your 4th year, you can continue your 5th year and get a master's just in that single year.
Oh, cool.
And so I started doing research. My undergrad had a tiny, tiny little physics program. And there was like 2 or 3 professors doing research. And so there's theoretical physics, and then there's experimental. Theoretical is like the pen and paper, computer.
Stephen Hawking. Yeah.
And then experimental is in a lab doing stuff. I am hard experimental.
Okay. So that's the first decision.
Yeah, so I knew that.
Theoretical or experimental.
Yeah, and other than that, at my school, it left me like 2 options. And one of the professors I liked a lot as a professor, so I just worked with him. He did a thing called condensed matter physics, but it was more for the professor than for the science.
Yeah.
So I did a master's with him in this 5th year program that only kind of counts. And then I applied to PhD programs. And for that I wanted astrophysics. I wanted to be an astronaut for like
That's
6
awesome.
weeks.
Yeah, an astronaut who's afraid of going on a submarine.
Yeah, well,
come on.
Until I read a bunch of bios of astronauts when I got really into it.
Yeah.
As like a 20-year-old, not like a 5-year-old,
Right.
and realized that's terrifying to be an astronaut. So sort of stopped that. But so I was looking into astrophysics, and or sort of similarly on that side of things. And then so I applied to schools, and so I really was applying to just like physics programs with huge departments, so I could figure out which specialty from there. And I also have a circus habit, or had a circus habit, which I don't know if...
What?
I feel like I've covered this. Some people know. Yeah, so I got into trapeze for a while.
What?
And so I wanted... So Florida State is one of
Yeah.
2 collegiate universities that has a circus and a really big physics program.
No way.
And at the time, they were building an astrophysics group. So I was like, well, this is perfect. So I applied there, I got in. And I ended up not joining the astrophysics group, but I joined, so I did nuclear physics as my specialty. So I have a PhD from FSU, and I got to do the circus for a while.
Wait, you're Dr. Jess Baker?
I am, technically.
Are you?
I feel like
No way I knew that. I did not know that.
I was a student continuously until 28, so
Dr. Jess Baker?
that's what
And we're
I'm-
live. I'm here with Dr. Jess Baker. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Seriously?
Yeah.
You have your doctorate in nuclear
Physics.
physics.
Yep.
What?
All it means is that I stayed in school longer than other. Like I just didn't stop doing school.
How did I? This is why the podcast is important. I don't do this for you guys. I literally do this for me. How did I not know that?
I feel like I have to have said it. So I
No,
don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. First off, I don't know why. I think the reason why my mind is so blown is because that's I studied nuclear engineering, and that's really interesting to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I am just hard one-sided math science.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't, and I did math and physics at undergrad.
You just kept going.
I just did this 5th year because it was free and I didn't know what else to do. And then with math and physics to grad schools, they essentially said in physics you get paid, in math you don't.
Right.
Essentially, I'm sure there's probably some, and I was like, well, I'm going to do the one where I
It
get
gets paid.
paid,
Yeah.
please. So I stumbled into nuclear. The professor emailed me. He's like, I'm looking for students.
So,
And
what do you study in nuclear physics? Like, what's a nuclear physics PhD? What would you? I have so many questions. Let's just start with what do you study in nuclear physics?
the nucleus. So protons and neutrons. You don't care about the rest of the stuff outside.
No electrons.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really care about those. So, but the whole like periodic table.
Yeah.
So hydrogen, helium, all those things.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a ton of stuff within that. But I was studying because I had an astrophysics interest, so I was studying nuclear reactions. So taking one nucleus, smashing it into another,
Yeah.
seeing what comes out, how often it comes out, what temperatures it comes out. And I was doing ones that went on in the stars because I wanted to inform astrophysics.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was very cool. We had this super sweet lab in our basement, and it was just a big nuclear accelerator, and we smashed aluminum into silicon, and aluminum into protons and made silicon. It was cool. It was a good time.
What? So, I don't even know where to start with my questions. When you when you create silicon, you just go in and like swipe it out, and now you have like a handful of silicon.
No, it lives for like negative 26 seconds, and then it blows up into a bunch of stuff.
What's
then you
negative
have
26 seconds?
femtosecond. I'm gonna get my science wrong, and then you're gonna call me.
But it's a positive amount of time.
Yeah. So
Oh.
it lives, and then it immediately breaks up into other
Yeah,
stuff, and then you give detectors that look at all the other stuff it breaks up,
Yeah.
and then spend 5 years of your life figuring out what those detectors were and piecing the thing. So it's like you have a smashed up toaster, put it back together, and figure out that it was a
Right.
toaster.
That makes sense. So what specifically did you study? Oh, man, I have so many questions. Okay. So when you get your PhD, you advance the realm of human knowledge.
Yeah, that's putting it boldly, but sure.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
anybody who does even a master, I mean, you're contributing to science in some way. Yeah. So I did individual new research. Yeah.
So what was your research?
So my research was this reaction. Essentially, looking at a certain isotope of silicon-26, how often it's created, and under what conditions it's created.
Yeah.
And the idea is this is one tiny, tiny little piece that goes into the big puzzle
For sure.
of supernova, because we know that supernova happen, but we don't really know all the details of exactly
Okay,
when they happen
supernova.
and the
I know.
when a star explodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if there was like one supernova that you were.
Yeah, no.
referring
So
to
just
that we
the overall phenomenon. And there's different types of supernova. And there's
So when a star explodes,
a lot of reactions happen. That's when elements are created.
how does the star actually explode?
We don't super know, to my
We
understanding.
don't supernova.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainties, and I'm not an expert in that.
You're not an expert in star explosions?
Yeah.
That would be a pretty cool one.
People are. It's amazing. So I was just studying one little reaction that happened under those conditions, because we know that reaction happens there, but we just don't quite understand how often it happens and if
It's the reaction of silicon-26 breaking down or combining and being created.
creating silicon-26.
What goes into creating silicon-26? What are the primary?
It was aluminum-25. The 25 just means how many protons and neutrons are up there. So it was aluminum-25 smashing into a proton creates silicon-26. So that's what we essentially did. I did in the lab. We know it happens in the stars, so we did it in the lab and tried to figure out. And we really, it's not very glamorous. You're just lowering error bars on a number, essentially. How often this happens.
Well, for sure. And that's the thing that blew my mind when I was in the nuclear Navy. They teach you all of the theory that you need to know to understand Navy nuclear power. They don't teach you all of the theory of all of nuclear power.
Yeah.
They just teach you the theory that you need to know to understand the Navy nuclear power. And in that, you get a lot of nuclear theory. It's on average, a reaction creates 2.7 electrons. Little things like that. And it's everything is an average game. And then I remember, everybody knows the periodic table, but what a lot of people don't know is the chart of the nuclides.
Yeah, that's my bread and butter.
Which is so much cooler. It is literally so much cooler. I thought the periodic table, and if you've never really dove down into the periodic table as an adult and understood its sophistication and its sheer brilliance, that's a modern wonder of the world. that table alone, it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
In there,
The organization and the structure and how it's all but the chart of the nuclides.
Yeah.
That's if the periodic table is a wonder of the world, the chart of the nuclides is the god of the world.
I agree.
So what is the chart of nuclides for people who don't know? I would just let me describe it and you tell me how far off I am.
Yeah.
Okay, so the periodic table is a chart of stable elements, right?
Yep.
And then the chart of the nuclides is all of the stable elements with their unstable. I guess I shouldn't say the periodic table is stable elements. I guess it would be the most stable form of the elements that we know about.
Yeah.
And then the chart of the nuclides is all of the ins or less stable permutations. Why can't I speak today? I'm so humbled in the gaze of a doctor. Permutations.
Yeah.
It has all of the permutations of all of the elements that we know about. So it'll have uranium-238, and 235, and 234, and then it'll give all the characteristics of those less stable forms of the element.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, isotopes is the word I would say.
Isotopes, that's what
it's all the different versions of, one element has X number of protons, and then all the different number of neutrons that you can add or remove that we've observed or made or exist.
And so your research contributed to a more precise square on the chart of the nuclides in the context of aluminum-26 or silicon.
So there's all kinds of different nuclear physics. So some people looking at really precisely determining the masses of some of these ones, because those still are up in the air, and I always found that research fascinating. But so mine was reaction physics. So it's taking two of those isotopes and how, because there's, between those isotopes, if these two smash in together, it makes this, or this one will decay into these two things, because a lot of those are radioactive.
Yeah.
So I was interested in the reaction between them. So my small little error bars that I lessoned was on a reaction rate. So.
Okay, so.
How often and at what temperatures and at what densities of these things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, going back to my narrow understanding of nuclear physics from the Navy, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but we're going to say it.
That scares me.
Neutrons are what I thought created the instability in things. I didn't realize protons could also do that.
Yeah, so there's a neutron drip line and a proton drip line where you can't add any more of. There's one or the other. So the reason I said
I guess that makes it makes a ton of sense.
Well, yeah, you can. Yeah, I guess essentially either ways. Because something is aluminum because it has 13 protons.
Right.
So that's what makes it aluminum, and so you can add more or less. So it's aluminum 26 because it also has 13.
Right.
Neutrons. So you can add or subtract neutrons.
And keep it the same element. That's how you get uranium 235 versus 238.
Yeah. So in that sense, yeah, adding the neutrons is what messes with the element, but it's that element because of its number of protons.
Right. So when you take aluminum and you slam a proton into it, by the fact that you're slamming a proton into it, you're literally changing that element
and becoming silicon, and that's the reaction that I was looking at.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, all science is...
That's okay, so fusion is adding protons. Fission is just combining two things where they fully stick together and create something new. Fission is separating two things. Right. And so...
Or something separating, yeah.
Right. And so to separate, you just have to make the thing that's radioactive so unstable that it separates and creates a lot of energy. Right? Yeah. And then to do fission, it's the opposite. So you can create that by throwing like helium and hydrogen together. You can do that by slamming a proton into aluminum and make it silicon. There's a million different ways that you can do that, right?
Yeah, and there's all kinds of different types of reactions that aren't all just fusion or fission. Some kind of just like closely pass each other and kind of for a second make a new state, but don't really fully become something new. And so there's all kinds of things going on. I mean, all of science, you become so I don't know anything about like nuclear reactors.
Sure.
That wasn't even like touched in my in my schooling, which is crazy because I say nuclear, so people assume I know what that stuff means. Because that was considered somewhat low mass stuff.
Yeah. And
astrophysicsy things, and so everything is so in the weeds that there's a lot that I don't know.
Well, for sure, but there's a ton that and that's the thing about becoming a doctor that fascinates me is like, where do you go? Because if I don't know something, I Google it. So I'm searching within the bubble of human knowledge to find the answer. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do you start a podcast? Well, someone's done that exists.
Yeah.
But when you're a PhD student, when you become a doctor, you're operating literally at the fringe of human knowledge. Even like if human knowledge is 1 billion things, you might be doing like 1/10 of those billion things, right? It's a very small aspect of what we've discovered. And so it sounds like you just do a bunch of experiments and report on the experiments, and then the scientific process refines what we know about that area in which you're doing the experiments.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly times where it's somebody has a huge aha moment and great for them. In my experience, it's very incremental. You do experiment, it fails, and you try to figure out why it fails, and then you do it again, and this time it was a little more successful. And then you have a friend that did this experiment or did a similar experiment, and they had success trying this, so you try that too. And it's very collaborative. I mean, there's you have advisors who have been running experience for years, so they say maybe try this way because this has worked in the past. And
yeah, so as a student, are you genuinely creating your own ideas, or are you just executing your professor's ideas?
It depends. I think it depends on the professor, depends on what you're doing. my project, or that reaction that I was looking at, had been studied for like 3 generations of physics. It's been studied a lot. It had been run by my advisor under 3 different grad students, and it had just been unsuccessful, and I just did not want to do it. I thought I was going to come in, like, finish it off with this guy that just left, quick get a publication, and then I'll start my own project.
Yeah.
And then it became my full project, and my advisor was really passionate about it.
That's cool.
And like knew we could get it, and spoiler, it still hasn't been published on, so I'm not sure. It may be a 4th generation that's going to crush it. But yeah, so I mean, I added a little bit to the story, and somebody else will take that number and run with it and take what I did and say, okay, this is what worked and this is what didn't work,
right.
But we saw this extra little thing here, so let's maybe dive into that part.
Yeah.
It's just, you're just adding a tiny little piece to this huge world.
This is so interesting to me. How do you, okay, so I understand the theory of what an atom smasher is. I get it.
Yes.
Like, I understand, okay, cool, you say that you put silicon in here and you throw a proton into it. That's great. Like, I could make a cartoon about that, I could see that, but how does that work? Magnets?
Yeah, so it's, there are still some charges, so things are positively or negatively charged, and positive, attracts
Positive
negative, and it pushes away positive.
Yeah.
So you can play around with either getting some electrons on there or stripping electrons away, and then putting magnets around it, and you can speed things up or speed things away.
And where do you get like a ball of aluminum? Like, are you just taking Coke cans and dropping them in there?
Yeah, so you start with, it depends on what you want to start with.
Yeah.
So like I started with a beam of magnesium, because you need to start with a stable beam.
A beam?
Yeah, so
of magnesium?
It sounds crazy, but it's really not. Like
a laser?
So you start with like a little cap of like a magnesium oxygen powder, some kind of stable powder, and then you vaporize it, essentially.
How do you vaporize
speed up a really intense, really intense beam of some kind.
Say laser.
Yeah.
Say laser.
I don't think it was a laser. I'm not entirely sure.
Really intense beams.
Something, yeah.
By definition. I mean, I think that's the definition of a laser.
Some intense something. Yeah, so you get this gas of magnesium, and it's at this point it would be positive or negatively charged, and then you stick it in this huge, you have this size of this room, giant thing, and it's super insulated because it has really high electric charges in it. And grad students would have to go in there and dust it sometimes because grad student life was a mess. And so you put these center really highly charged, and you make it so this is negative, this is positive, so they attract and it speeds up. So it speeds up, and then at the exact right second, you strip off some electrons, make this negative. The center is now positive. It speeds away. So you're just playing with electric fields. Essentially, it's everyone knows that positive and positive don't like each other.
Yeah.
Positive and negative want to get away.
Right.
And just using that and
How do you
timing
strip
things.
electrons?
Carbon foil.
Carbon
Yeah,
foil?
you run it through a foil.
Oh,
and the
like
carbon.
a super small filter?
Yeah.
And it literally just knocks electrons off?
Yeah, it pulls away the electrons. Yeah, and then it makes it positive, and then it flies away. Yeah, it's a really the lab is what made me want to do this. If I knew I was gonna be talking about this, I should have remembered what I did 5 years ago. But
oh my goodness. Okay, so here's what I'm hearing. Tell me if this is right. You have this nucleus with electrons in it. Okay, so in this case, the nucleus we're working with is negatively charged. So you have this giant magnet that creates a huge, strong thing of this, and you probably have thousands, if not millions, of these similar nuclei racing towards this carbon filter that's going to decapitate the electrons from the nucleus, which will change its polarity or its charge.
Change its charge, yeah. So it makes it positively charged.
Okay. All right.
So it is negative.
Yep, it's negative because of its abundant electrons, and so then it goes. It gets a lot of the electrons chopped off. Where do those electrons go? They just get attracted to something else?
Yeah, I think they're just in the carbon. I assume
Okay.
it's just in the foil, yeah.
So now you have this nucleus with much fewer electrons now. So now it becomes positively charged. And at the moment of the decapitation, you switch the...
Yeah, in this case, the center's still... So the center's been positive the whole time. We have a couple kinds of accelerators. But at this point, the center's still positive. So it was positive to pull it in. Because it was, yeah, the beam was negative. The center was positive. Pull it in. Now you take the electrons off. And now you've got positive, positive.
Yeah.
Push it away. And then there's a whole bunch. There's like a handful of different types of accelerators.
Yeah.
That one's called the tandem Van de Graaff. Then we had a linear accelerator, which is the second stage that, through similar processes, just magnets, you can bend beams, you can, with certain magnetic field, you can select. So in this original beam, you've got a bunch of other elements you may not want. So you can kind of get rid of the stuff you don't want, because magnets bend elements, so if you can bend what you want, the right amount.
So the Matrix is real?
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, anyway, it's...
Or no, it's not the Matrix. What's the one that they throw bullets out of the gun and they can make the bullets
and they
curve?
I'm not sure. Yeah. It's all real.
Okay, so then the longer the accelerator, the longer the particle accelerator, then you're just... So aren't they making one in Europe, or one in Europe might exist that's like 1 billion acres long, and what's the point of that? Is it just making things faster, which then makes things more accurate?
Yeah, in general, yes, that one's really big. That's a big circle. Ours was a line, essentially.
Oh, okay.
But they're trying to get even smaller. So I was looking at nuclei, so protons and neutrons. They're looking within the proton, or within the neutron. They're looking even smaller. So to get smaller, you have to get higher energies, higher speeds.
Got it. Okay. So this thing gets decapitated and then it flies away.
Yeah, it keeps going.
And then how do you collect information from that?
So we have a detection a chamber, a bunch of detectors. So that silicon I create for like a tiny amount of time, and then it breaks up. And it breaks up into protons, and there's neutrons, and there's gamma rays, and there's some heavier stuff.
By break up, is that the same as like a radioactive decay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So exactly that. So we catch all the stuff from the decay, or we try to catch as much of the stuff as you can.
Yeah.
And then that's where the bulk of the work and the
you basically have this, so the element gets decapitated, and because it's decapitated, it blows up.
Yeah, so all that decapitate is just to speed it up, just to create a beam of enough energy. So eventually you're just taking a beam and hitting it into a target, and that's...
Yeah, okay, so maybe that's what I'm missing. Where do you introduce the protons?
At the very end. So you've made this beam of magnesium, you've sped it up, you've gotten it fast.
And how do you create the beam of protons?
That's just so it's not fully protons, it's deuteron, and it's a deuteron something.
What's a deuteron?
Proton and a neutron.
Okay.
So it's like a heavy, yeah. So you can't, so you have to have, it's just like it's a stationary thing, just a piece of material.
Oh, okay.
So this beam comes in and smashes into something that's...
So you just have a piece of proton.
Yeah, it's just like a little film, yeah. And so the problem is your beam isn't fully pure. There's some magnesium, there's some silicon, there's some other stuff in there. And my target had some carbon in there, there's some oxygen because it gets in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of other stuff. And so you create what you want to create. You get like 6 of those, but then you get a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
And so that's...
Okay, so you essentially what an accelerator. Essentially what an accelerator is it's like a rifle for elements. In your case, you shot aluminum.
Yeah.
So your bullet was aluminum.
Yes.
You shot aluminum at a target using magnetic fields.
Yeah, electricity
and then
magnetism.
when your bullet interacted with the target, it created
silicon
fission.
I wouldn't say that.
Or
I would just say it just created silicon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It created silicon because it smacked and it absorbed a proton at
the
some
aluminum,
point.
took on a proton and became silicon.
Okay, so your target, now you shot your target, so basically you have this target, you pull the target out, and then you analyze the target for all of the information.
No, so behind the target you've got a whole bunch of detectors. And the detectors, so all the pieces of so the silicon so I create silicon, and then it immediately destroys
In, like,
itself.
Millionths of seconds.
Yeah. And then all you see in the detectors is a little time signal that something happened, and some amount of energy.
Oh, so then you take that energy and then you can equate the energy into what the element is.
So you try to figure out. So you look at time and energy and the different things, and you try to figure out, okay, that these were protons. Okay, I found that these protons came at this time, and then okay, they've got some aluminum over here, and they've got something. You're piecing it back together and saying, oh, this is how often we got silicon versus how often we got others. Yeah, I don't know.
That is so fascinating. I cannot wait for people to hear this because I want to know if other people find this as mind-boggling. Why can't I talk today? This is blowing my mind right now.
My life experience tells me that most people have turned this off a good 15 minutes ago.
I think those people are lame. I don't like those people. If you turned this off 15 minutes ago, I don't like you. If you're listening, you are so okay. Wow.
Yeah, I found it was very interesting. I enjoyed it. I like science.
Okay, so now I definitely have to circle back to your current job. Okay, because...
Pretty unrelated.
Well,
it's going to sound less related.
Well, before I was thinking that I didn't realize I was in the presence of Dr. Baker. And I had assumed, clearly wrongfully, that you were just run-of-the-mill project manager type. Not that there's anything wrong with being run-of-the-mill project manager type.
Yeah.
That's basically, but that's where a lot of people, they graduate college, they go to booze and they get a good job at booze, and then they end up working in this capacity, but mostly as like the manager. So you are like a subject matter expert.
I might be someday. Currently, I'm just a newish employee.
But you're on the potential track of becoming.
Could be, yeah.
The expert.
So I really left the field. So academia, there was a crossroads when I graduated. I could have stayed in academia and stayed in that path, and I really left the field.
Okay.
I wanted a 9-to-5. I wanted time off. I wanted to not spend my life writing grants.
So you could have stayed and been a researcher.
Yeah, it's a really, really tough life. Good on people that can do it.
Yeah. I mean, same as living on a submarine for your career.
Yeah. And not always, you have to apply to post. I mean, I was a student again continuously until I was 28.
Yeah.
I would have had to do another at least 2 to 3 years of postdoc work, maybe apply to programs.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, it's a struggle.
So you left that world to get a real job.
Yeah.
Could you have gotten the job that you're in without a PhD?
Yes, definitely.
I see. Okay.
And the degree will absolutely open doors for me.
For sure.
It's given me options. Occasionally, if I have to email somebody high ranking, I'll drop the.
You don't lead with it?
No, almost never.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a huge accomplishment.
It is, but it only. I mean.
You lead with that.
It has its time and place.
No, you put that in your email signature. You do that right now, right? What's your? What? No. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? I mean, that's a title that you earn. You are Dr. Jess Baker, comma PhD, nuclear, damn physics. You gotta put that shit in there.
No, I'm very proud of it, but there's only times and places where it needs to be.
Like every email you send is the appropriate time and place. Yeah. I mean, you earned it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? It's not bragging.
Yeah, it just doesn't need to be said sometimes. I don't know.
Your humility is impressive.
It's not. Yeah, I don't know.
I would not be able to if I had a PhD, my neighbors would know about it. like, you couldn't meet me, and I don't. Maybe.
That's the other weird. I mean, in that world, everybody you know either has a PhD or is going to have a PhD. I mean, all of my friends in grad school, I don't think anyone failed out. I think everyone got the degree. And all your professors have PhD. I mean, it's not unique. It's not. I mean, it's still impressive. I think we all appreciate the work we put in, but
everyone in the gym is going to call you Dr.
That doesn't make sense.
No,
I'm sure there's a lot of medical doctors at the gym.
I guess, that makes sense. I mean, I guess I take it back. I wouldn't, I don't know I sincerely don't know what I would do, because I definitely don't like the people who over prescribe their email signatures. It's like, seriously, you put that on there?
Yeah.
I had an executive officer when I was in the Navy. I did not like him at all. Whew. Now I feel like if ever any of my exos that I did like, I feel like I need to name them.
Yeah,
so all the exos.
Not you.
No, this guy sucked, and he yelled at me one day for not having an email signature because I like to just manually sign my name and I put whatever relevant information that pertains to the email in my signature. So emailing someone, lieutenant Emery, if I told them to call me, it's my email address or my phone number. Yeah. They have my email address, so I don't need to do anything. Yeah. And he ordered me and made it a point. He was like, this is not a debate. Go do this. Chain of command. Aye, sir. And so I spent about 2.5 hours writing the longest email signature I had ever. You know, people put quotes.
Oh yeah.
I put my favorite poem, and I picked a long poem. Like it was the whole poem. I had obviously my email, my personal email. I had my home address. I had my first of kin contact information. I had favorite color. I had my favorite poem. I had like Facebook, like all the social media was fairly new. It was like 2008, 9.
Yeah.
And so I had like find me at Facebook, you know, all of the things. And by the time it was done and everything was spaced, I put, you know, tons of quotes. It was all formatted in different colors. And I mean, it was literally like 5 or 6 scrolls.
It was a signature.
And then I replied to an email that he had sent me, like, Roger that, sir, that's complete. Send. And then I get a phone call.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Come to my office.
I'm thinking back to that Navy SEAL who said, like, just do the thing.
Yeah.
He probably would have appreciated that.
I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was so funny. And I thought, foolishly, that he would have seen the humor in it.
Yeah, appreciated.
But he didn't even appreciate the humor. And that's what made him, that's why he sucked.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's
he could have been like, haha, okay.
Funny.
Yeah.
Send a few emails, change it by tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would have been like, cool.
Yeah.
He was seriously angry. Like, what the hell do you expect when you make such a big deal about something so small?
Some silly thing.
Man, it was glorious. I wish I saved it. I wish I would have sent my Gmail because it was. I've forgotten my favorite poem at this point.
You had it at some point.
It might have been like a Shel Silverstein. Yeah. So, but you drop the doctor from time to time.
Yeah. Occasionally, it has its moments.
Do you like when you're? Have you ever been in a scenario where someone's disrespecting you and like talking down to you and you go, "That's Dr. Baker, sir"?
Absolutely not.
No.
I could never. I'd be so embarrassed. Thankfully, I haven't been in many situations where I've been highly disrespected, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of another question. Being in such a military environment, do you find there to be any sort of like masculine culture and, you know, like it's hard to be a woman in that environment, or is that kind of not a big deal?
I haven't noticed it, and I mean, coming from physics, I've always been in male-dominated fields,
That's a good point, yeah.
So I haven't noticed it any more or less. There's probably more women in my work group now than I've ever had. Right. So, yeah, I haven't noticed anything.
That's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
good on the military.
Yeah, exactly.
We're about to drop some accusations. That's, man, I can't get over the fact that you're a doctor. How did I not know that? I feel like I am the jerk for not exploring.
No, I mean, I don't hide it. I'm not, but I don't go out of my way. It doesn't come up at CrossFit. It doesn't, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I when asked, I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't feel the need. It doesn't come up spontaneously often.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if this changes my opinion.
Oh no! Everyone's judging. Yeah, everyone's like, you're not that smart.
No, I mean it certainly changes like the context of the conversation we were having earlier. Like it doesn't change. It obviously doesn't change my perception of you as a human. You know, like you've always been cool, but it just
seem a little dorkier now.
No, not dorky. It just changes. It changes the whole perspective, and it's sort of, you know, in life we make a lot of assumptions. You know, I think that's how you have to operate. There was something stupid that was on Facebook. I'm sure you saw it. It's like you know, if the first letter of the word and the last letter of the word are there, and all the other letters are there, then you can just breeze over it and you assume.
Figured it, yeah.
And then there's all of these like optical illusions that are created off the assumptions your brain makes based on negative space and positive space. And I mean, here I am talking about that to a doctor.
But see, that's probably why I shy away from it, because literally all it means is that
you went to school for a long time.
I just stayed in school longer. I just like didn't know what to do with my life, so I just kept going to school.
Yeah.
And I know a lot about one tiny little thing.
Yeah.
But like, I could even talk to another nuclear physicist and not know what they're doing.
For sure.
And so there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's no amounts of knowledge.
I guess the impressive thing. Well, I guess anybody who's achieved something, I think the thing that's most impressive about it is the fact that you sought and you achieved, that you know, like, we're gonna go to the moon. Like, does going to the moon actually matter in the grand scheme of things? Like, I'm sure a moon physicist would be like, absolutely. Like, you wouldn't have Pop-Tarts if we didn't go to the moon. I'd be like,
You're welcome.
I take it back. But it's the idea that we said we're gonna go to the moon, and we got to the moon, and we got back from the moon. And I think that arc is an amazingly impressive arc. And so I think that's the thing that's so fascinating, or that's the thing that I'm exploring about this new Jess Baker that I've met today. It's like, when I assume that everyone's good, right? Just as a general default. I'm not saying that this is the right approach. So don't, you know, if you're listening and you, Jess, like, don't think that this is correct. This is the way that I operate. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying this is right. It could be right. I don't know. Maybe this is just the default consciousness of where I live.
Yeah.
But I assume everyone's a good person. Not a great person, but just a good person.
Yeah.
I don't assume you're bad. I don't assume I'm going to hate you. I assume that I'm going to like you, and I like good people, right? And in order for me to deviate from that base assumption of good, you have to show me that you're bad, or you have to show me that you're great.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're neutral.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being neutral. Like, neutral is a very good achievement for a lot of people, you know? But greatness is something that few people have, and I think greatness comes from doing great things. And sure, yeah, like if I was in the presence of LeBron James, I would, wow, that's really impressive what you've accomplished in your career. You know, the same way if I was in the presence of an author, or in the presence of someone who started a business, or in the presence of someone who, you know, finished a marathon. Like, there's so many there's so many different ways to impress me, I guess is what I'm saying. And each one of those little impressions leaves a mark on me that deviates my perception of you as a person in the positive. The same way that if I saw you being rude to a homeless person, I'd be like, oh, tick mark negative.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean you're an evil person or that I don't like you. It's like, well, you know, noted.
Informed,
noted.
yeah.
And a lot of that happens, I think, on the subconscious level, and it's not something I'm going around keeping tabs on everybody, but I mean, we've all known people who are just rude to the waitress at the restaurant, and if that happens enough times, you phase them out of your life, or you start to think like, wow, that person's a rude person, right?
Yeah.
And I think the opposite is true, where, you know, someone who continually does super impressive things, eventually you're like, that person's a genius. Like Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
Like,
he's proven himself.
That's an example. It's like, oh, PayPal.
Yeah.
Good work.
Cool.
Good on you. Great idea, great execution. I respect you. Oh, we're not done? we're still going? Okay, cool. Well, good on you again. Well, good on you again. Good on you again. And it's like the same thing with Steve Jobs. It's like, oh, founded Apple. Good man. Right? But then it's like, the iPhone? The iPad? What? And it's just, you get more and more and more, and eventually you're just this icon, right?
Yeah.
I think that happens impression by impression. The same way that, you know, people become negative and negative and negative based on impression.
Right, yeah.
It was a really long-winded way of psychoanalyzing myself to not being a bad person for being really impressed that you're now a PhD.
No, well,
that you are now.
Yes. I appreciate that. I do.
Man, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do you think less of me because I only have a bachelor's?
Absolutely not. I guess, I mean, there's, especially given that I could have done my job straight out of undergrad.
Yeah.
Or they're, you know, similar. I what I've learned has informed what I'm doing, but, you know, I'd probably have a lot more on my retirement account if I started 6 years ago. There's something to say for people who I really just didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just like kept going in this path because that's what you do. So
you were just the aluminum going linearly towards the giant positivity, and you hadn't run through the filter of life to decapitate all of your hopes and aspirations yet.
Precisely. Spot on.
I'm going to use that metaphor so often. You're just a linear accelerator. Dump some of those electrons so you don't have to do it the hard way.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Now I wanted to talk a lot about gymnastic stuff, but I feel like that's so unimportant now. It's like, who cares?
No, that's just as, my life is probably those two things, athletics and academics. Those are the two things I've done.
Yeah.
So, that's all I got.
What's the, I don't even know what this
Just
question
throw
is.
everything off.
Yeah, so, what's the success rate of students who start a PhD program? Like, what percentage of students who start? What's the attrition rate or whatever?
It probably depends. I don't know, like, nationally. My school, I remember, like, day one they said 60%, and we stuck to that pretty hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is people who chose to leave or wanted to.
Right. It's not like people are washing out because they're not smart enough or they can't cut it.
Yeah.
Just they didn't stick with it.
It was a couple of those.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Very few people just, like, couldn't quite make it. And we have, handfuls of different, exams you have to pass and classes, grades you have to get to continue on. But a lot of people, chose, I think one guy, like, started just like, oh, I could just go work for, some big coding company and make a boatload of money. And you're like, that's better than your $15,000 a year student stipend. And some people would switch into like an engineering program or something else where they have practical life skills and they leave. So I think it's about 60% for my school.
Is it more mentally demanding, not like tedious? Are you operating on a higher level of mental function through that PhD program, or is it just similar stuff, just like different calculations?
Hard to say. I guess I feel like the coursework, your first couple years, year or two, are heavily coursework.
Yeah.
And after that, you're primarily research. And coursework, for me, has always been just brute force. You just do a lot of work. You do a lot of problem sets. You just keep doing it.
Right.
And so that's sort of tedious. That's also what I was best at. So I've been good. I'm good at school. I can just do the work. The research side of things is that mental. You need to come up with innovative new ideas and new ways to think about this problem, and you get something. And that's not my strength. I'm not. Creativity stresses me out.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's the field I would imagine not many creative types get into.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, now you're here, be creative.
Yeah, and it takes
dork.
really, those are the best and the brightest that can look at this new problem and figure out this way to do it. And
yeah. Well, those are the people that change the world. Like, think differently. This is an Apple commercial.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a really good point because it does take a brilliant mind to look at the status quo and then to deviate from it.
Yeah.
In a smart way. There's tons of people that look at the status quo. I'm reading this Jordan Peterson book at the moment, and he's talking about how following societal norms is almost always the right answer until it's not.
Yeah, until that one time. Yeah.
And he's like, you're basically following mankind's entire history, his opinion, culminating in the developments of Western civilization and how sure it has its downfalls, but there's a ton of good that has come from Western civilization. And to ignore the status quo of this is to basically spit on the work of millions of years of humanity or whatever. And he takes 200 pages to build to this point, so I'm watering it down and probably something that can be soundbited into incorrect statements. Anyway, so what was I talking about?
Yeah, just the making a new idea is it takes a lot. There's eight new ideas that are wrong.
Right.
One new idea that's right.
Exactly. And the genius people can see the wisdom in going against the wisdom.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
It's like, like looking at this new thing and not being like, I think heroin would be a great thing for my life.
Yeah.
Not everyone's doing heroin. Watch me do it better.
Yeah, it's gonna be the best.
Not so smart.
Yeah.
But like, the world needs an iPhone. You know, like that's smart, right? That's cool.
Yeah, the absolute best researchers have that creative mind and love the process, the work, the hitting walls and trying it. I mean, they can work all night. They're so passionate about that.
Yeah.
Just like you're saying with like loving the pain of swimming. Like the best swimmers are the ones that love that pain.
Right.
To me, that research at 4 a.m, hitting your head against a wall for the 8th time you've hit the same wall. I didn't love that in the same sense.
Yeah.
That the best of the best incredible researchers did.
I think Erin had this analogy. My sister has this analogy about swimmers. She goes, the best swimmers, like swimming is like throwing raw eggs against the wall, and the best swimmers in the world are the ones that don't break. You know?
Yeah, everyone else is like, no.
Yeah, I feel like it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about with the researcher.
Yeah.
It's like the ones who can just tough it out and grit it out, and who for whatever reason are like love that so much.
Yeah.
Wow. What's like, isn't the God particle a huge?
It's a thing, yeah.
Do you know about that?
Not really. So that's what they're looking at that big in Europe, the huge one.
Yeah. You don't know enough to explain it to me?
Not really.
I've watched a lot
not
of
enough to be
YouTube.
recorded explaining it to you. How about that?
I just pressed mute.
I don't want to say something wrong and then have
What's the coolest thing
percentages.
what's the coolest thing you learned in your time of nuclear physics? Like did you just connect some dots that like, totally blew your mind? And it doesn't have to be like a wildly sophisticated thing.
Yeah.
And if you need a second to think about it.
I really don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what blew my mind.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, because I learned two things, two concepts that just drastically. I don't know why I was so blown away by these things, but so on a boat we create water, or we create oxygen from the water that we create. The water process is pretty straightforward. It's either you shock it and put it back together or whatever, or you reverse osmosis it. Sorry, you don't shock it. You filter it, reverse osmosis, whatever, and then you create the water. And then from the water, you shock the water, and then that's how you create the oxygen. And so when I was qualifying on the evaporate, whatever we called it, I forget what we called it, the oxygen maker, we'll call that. When I got the checkout on that, I was like doing all the studying on it, and then like for whatever reason I just never understood how the oxygen was separated from the hydrogen. And then the guy was like, positive and negative. They're just two different charged tubes, and like one gets pulled one way and the other gets pulled the other way. It's like, super simple. And I was like, like imagine being the person. I mean, there was somebody on this planet who solved that problem.
Yeah.
That's so cool to me.
Yeah.
That's so cool to me to be the guy who had that aha moment, or girl, who knows? Be the person who like thought of it, tested it, and then it worked.
Yeah.
High five.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So that blew my mind. Another mind-blowing thing was, so you learn how to, like, if there's ever a fire on the boat, fires don't happen often, but one never happened on my boat, but you drill for them all the time. And so whenever a fire happens, you rig a space for ventilation. So it's like, rig ship for ventilating engine room or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then essentially the process of that is to open up ventilation vents in that room, and then to close the ventilation vents in all the other room, and like literally push air, like all of the ship's air is going to the compartment where the fire is, and it's isolated. And so you're literally, like in my head when I was like qualifying just ventilation, it's like, oh yeah, we're opening vents so that the air can go out. That makes sense. But what I didn't understand is the other angle of it is not only are you allowing the smoke to escape, you're putting positive pressure onto the compartment that has the smoke, so the smoke can't get out.
Yeah. Very cool.
That blew my mind too. And so not only are you like literally pushing the smoke out in the fastest way possible, you're not allowing the smoke to expand.
Come back. Yeah.
Man,
good stuff.
When I figured that out, I was like, I am not afraid to be on this boat. They have thought of everything.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I feel like subs probably have some of the craziest technology because you have to keep a bunch of people alive in this like incredibly inhabitable location.
Yeah.
Yeah, subs probably have some of the most intense technology out there.
It was mind blowing.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Did that jostle any?
I really don't know if I. I don't know. I'm like a bad scientist. Like I don't do a ton of like the pop science stuff. Like I don't really like, because my excuse used to be that I like did science all day, so I didn't want to like go home and read the I fucking love science page because I like lived it.
Right.
But now I don't live it so much, and I still like don't. I don't know. I just think it's all really cool. That's why I love it, and that's why I did it. But I don't know if I've had like a high five moment or like a that was amazing. I don't know. I'm sure I've had like a lot of little ones. Yeah.
And now as a doctor, everything is just so like blasé to you.
Just
like, you and Einstein communicate on. Well, he theoretical, maybe not.
Yeah, nonsense. I really like those little simple things that make a huge. I think those are fascinating.
Like the electron decapitator.
Yeah. No, but like those, just like changing the air pressure can make such a difference. Like the really simple solutions are like the little nitty gritty problems.
Yeah.
And that stuff's really cool.
Those are to me, the most impressive things. Like one of the greatest inventions mankind has ever made is, that thing in the Starbucks that you put in the lip?
Beautiful.
Like,
or like the fact when you're drinking out of a Starbucks cup and it like isn't really coming out and you poke a bigger hole in the top and it comes out quicker. Like that's some very cool science.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those simple things.
Seriously, I think there needs to be a class. Like before you start teaching physics and all these things, there just needs to be a class of like cool things that you use every day.
Yeah.
And then get kids jazzed about science because they see it every day.
Yeah.
Because if you're like, all right, kids, today we're going to talk about the Venturi effect and its thermodynamic.
Yeah.
It's like, look, which like water is going to pour out of this coffee cup faster?
Yeah.
Or coffee. That's the stuff that to me is so fascinating. I think that's the problem with school.
No, I agree. I mean, people enjoy science. Like the whole population finds this stuff interesting.
Yeah.
You just have to do a better job of saying it.
Right.
And doing it. And there's a whole, people studying physics education and how to do it well, and it's a whole world of things. But it can be done better. And people will go into physics because they had one great teacher.
Yeah.
And people will shy away because they had one bad.
Yeah.
And
that's why I went into submarines. The one officer that I respected at the Naval Academy just happened to be my company commander, and he was a lieutenant submariner. He was Lieutenant Mel Smith. He's gonna be like an 18-star admiral one day. He is so much. He's so awesome.
Yeah.
He's great. He's really, man, Mel Smith.
That makes a difference. Those good.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna talk about something. We were talking about inventions, people being awesome. Yeah. Oh yeah, I followed a blogger, a math teacher, and he was a blogger. And he was just talking about the way that he taught math to his kids, and it's like algebra 2, pretty simple stuff in the grand scheme of things. But he was just saying that, like, the way that he would present his word problems is saying, I have a bathtub. What do you want to know about the bathtub? Think of questions, and we will answer them together as a class. Kids are like, how much water can fit in the bathtub? How quickly can the water, how much faster is filling up a bath than a shower? All these questions.
Yeah.
It's like great questions. And then he had, planned for most of the predictable questions, and he's like, all right, what information do you need to know to figure out the volume of the tub? How wide is it? It's this wide. How deep is it? How long is it? Whatever. Yeah. And what assumptions are you making in this calculation? Oh, we're assuming that it's perfectly rectangular. How do we account for the fact that it's curved? And then, anyway, he just, got kids engaged in what's kind of a silly story,
Yeah.
But that's so much better than you have a bathtub that has a shower head that's extruding water at 6.4, whatever.
Yeah.
That's silly.
So that's what's interesting, because I think a lot of the research shows that's the best way to engage kids and to do that stuff. But the way I learn, I hate that.
Yeah.
Like, don't give me some open-ended thing. Give me a bunch of numbers. I will do
That's
the problem.
A good point.
I think so strongly in that one. Like,
Yeah.
So I would have despised a class that had open-ended something or other's questions. Like, what do you mean we're sitting in the bathroom? What do you want? Like, tell me what you want and I'll do it. And that's what I said before. Like, I started with that. I'm a good rule follower. I'm good. Give me what to do.
Well, I guess that's why you succeeded in school.
Yeah, and that's why I was always successful in coursework. For that reason.
Because that's like all of school is taught towards your type of learner. Right. Like, I did not learn very well in that environment.
Yeah. But
I thrived on the submarine. Like, when I got to the submarine and I could talk to somebody for 18 hours and learn about all the things, I did really good when I could have conversations with people, and I did really bad when it was just, you know, here's a math problem, go do. Like, I don't get that. I don't understand that. That's what. Yeah, I don't have any answers when it comes to education like that.
And it's hard because if you do it all one way, you'll weed out the people that learn.
Right.
You know, one or the other, and you have to somehow reach out to all learners.
Right.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Not to like loop it back around, but I feel like that's similar in I mean, not one style of coaching works for every athlete.
That's a good point too.
And it's the same that you're gonna lose people if you teach all in one style or something other.
Yeah.
Similar.
And just learning how to like change your style based on how people get connected. This math teacher blogger guy was talking about personality matching, and the way to connect to the kid who's too cool is to also be too cool. It's like, but the way to connect to the person who just loves class and is, front of the row asking all the questions is to be to match her excitement or his excitement. And then the other way is to like match the apathy, like, whatever, like, I don't know. It's probably not that extreme, like, oh, you don't want to do your homework? That's fine. I'm cool with that. But it's like that personality matching, I think, is really important as a coach. I mean, and teachers, obviously, good teachers, the teachers that you connect with, were able to create that emotional connection with you and get you excited about something. The teachers I remember, certainly, the coaches that I remember, certainly. And that's ultimately what I think is when you're in charge of educating, whether it's teaching, coaching people in CrossFit or educating people in physics, whatever it is, I think ultimately at your core, what your role is like inspirer. Like, you are there to light the fuse that allows the person a lifetime journey into something. And if you're the person who stomps fuses out, I think that's bad. Yeah. Right? There's a million different ways to light fuses, but it's pretty universally accepted to stomp fuses out. I mean, there's like, you suck, you're the worst.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that holding someone accountable isn't another way of motivating them. So it's a delicate dance we all participate in this life.
People are hard. That's what, like, I don't know, people who study like social science, and like, that's crazy. Like, at least like protons do the same thing for the most part, no matter what you tell them to do.
Yeah.
Like, math follows rules, but humans are complicated.
Yeah. This Jordan Peterson book, it's called the 12 Rules of Life, a way of making order out of life's chaos. And it's so fascinating because he's basically giving you a summary of all of the greatest thinkers in the world and giving you like their cliff notes, Yeah. And he's going into the archetypal stories of Adam and Eve and talking about human nature and Aristotelian philosophy and Freud and all of these great thinkers, and he's using them all to articulate 12 fairly simple rules, like don't lie, or he said tell the truth, or at least don't lie, right? Yeah. But then he gives you, I'm listening to it on tape on Audible or whatever, but he gives you like an hour and a half essay on the psychology of lying and how the psychology of lying is a destructive human trait. And how societies who are built on lies are societies that crumble, but societies that are built on truths succeed and grow. Yeah. And he takes it to like such magnitude. You're like, whoa.
Guess I shouldn't lie.
Right.
Yeah.
That dress looks ugly. That dress doesn't look ugly, Juliana. It's beautiful. But it's things like that, and I do agree that human nature is so crazy. But it's also, I mean, the same way that aluminum into silicon is predictable on a spectrum, humanity is kind of the same way, you know? Like, we all have problems, but they're, you know, outside of some extreme problems, right? You know, and I'm not delegitimizing those extreme problems, but outside the, you know, depression, anxiety, nervousness, you know, blank isms, you know, like, there's, I don't know, like, there are solutions. The same way that you're not gonna do your test and then all of a sudden be like, whoa, there's a huge chunk of gold in here. How'd we do that?
Yeah.
We're rich. Like, you're gonna get results that are sporadically predictable, or predictably sporadic.
Yeah.
I think the humankind is kind of like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off.
I mean, I don't know. I guess as like a stereotypical scientist, like, I get math. Humans are like another, like,
Yeah.
that's a scary other thing.
That's true too. Yeah, that's, you know, you've changed my mind just now here in this last 2 seconds. Jordan Peterson is fresh in my mind because I was literally listening to him right before you showed up, and he was talking about the way that he's a clinical psychologist, and he was talking about the way that he does his psychology thing, his psychoanalyst, I don't know what to call it, the way that he treats people. And he was talking about imparting his bias onto the person, and he gave an example of, you know, a woman that he was treating who, whatever, she would get like blackout drunk and then like couldn't remember if she was raped or not, and that's a big thing. And he was like, he laid out a whole case for how he could convince her that she was, and then he laid out a whole case of how he could convince her that she wasn't. And he was like, neither are my job, right? My job is to allow her. Anyway, I can't speak to the psychology of it, but what I can speak to is the idea that, you know, as humans, we kind of have to, you know, find our own way and figure our own thing out. Yeah. Totally unrelated to the rape thing. I shouldn't have brought rape up. Now people are going to be like, what the hell? You're saying rape's okay? No. Listen.
Just an example.
Listen to the whole podcast. Read Jordan Peterson and disagree with him.
You'll know. Yeah.
I didn't mean that. I don't know. I think that like when you listen to people, you can help them reason for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, there's like experts in
right.
psychology and all. I mean,
yeah.
I am glad that there's people that can do that, but I think that's
not you.
Yeah, I'm better with
right
numbers than humans.
Right. Well, the number person would be like, no, tell that person to do the things to be right.
Yeah, I've been accused of being like a little too robotic at times. You know, just like fix it this way, do X, and you just like.
Do you think too robotic is a negative? Do you think that you can be, like, you clearly have your human skill set. Like, you are uniquely great at the things you're uniquely great at. Do you think it's important to try to become better at the things you're weak at? Or do you think it's okay just to thrive in the things that you're great at?
I think the world needs both, right? You need the people who are expertly good in one thing and just like let them dig into that. Personally, I think I would benefit a lot from getting more comfortable in the gray area of things and all that, and trying to force myself to do some creative effort or something because I just hate it.
I guess that would be the same as like the CrossFit example. You know, if you're super weak at gymnastics movements, right. Would you be better served never doing them? Yeah. You'd probably be better served doing them.
Which is why every time I show up to a gym, I only do gymnastics movements because that's what I love.
Exactly.
And that's not what I need to be working on. But, and there's something to, you know, so that I still love CrossFit, I need to spend time doing the stuff I love. And there's something to both.
Yeah, I agree. Because the things that you're good at give you confidence and give you enjoyment and, you know, all the things that come with that. But the things that you're bad at give you future confidence and future enjoyment.
To work on.
I think there's a lot of parallels in life to that.
Yeah.
Like that parallel of, you know, work on the things that you're weak at, but also celebrate the things that you're really good at. Like don't don't think that roboticism is a bad thing. I'm sure there's examples in which I'd be like, yeah, that's way too robotic.
Chill out.
Yeah, my friend died. I am very sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
There's some middle ground, yeah, for
So
sure.
your weaknesses in life would be things like creativity and psychology.
Yeah, all of that. Rolling my eyes when somebody says psychology.
That's right. That's not a real science. You're not a real doctor. Yeah. No, I'm weak in all the things that you're like. We're opposites, right? Like,
Yeah.
Did you do the personality test? Do you remember?
The only one I always remember, I'm definitely introverted.
Yeah.
Hard that one. I don't remember what the
I
other
think
ones
you're
are.
ISTJ.
Yeah, I think we were opposites.
Yeah,
is what I remember.
literally every letter. Yeah, every single letter is
Yeah.
the opposite. I'm an ENFP, and oh man, I don't like. I was good at science, good at math, but that's not where I naturally just wanted to wonder. But I'm also bad at art. I don't know what I'm good at. I have to figure that out.
It's extroverted. You're the personality.
But
You're
it's weird. I'm not though. I'm like, so when I take the tests, I'm an ENFP. When I take the test in the context of like Sean, the gym owner coach, I'm 53% extroverted, 47% introverted. But when I take the test from like Sean, not the coach, like 80% introverted.
Interesting.
Yeah, like after this conversation, I'm gonna sit in the bath and like, listen to a book.
Yeah.
And like when I leave the gym, and that's the sign of introvert extrovert. Like, where do you get your energy from?
Yeah.
It's not that we or introverts can't connect with people or can't be engaging or hate people. No, it's not that at all. It's do you get energy from being by yourself or from other people? And definitively, being around people is exhausting. I love it. It's great, but it wears me down. You know, like David was out of town last week, and I coached a lot more than I normally coach, and I would come home exhausted, like more tired than I've been in a long time.
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me. Cool. We've been at this for a while.
Yowza. Yeah.
Any last words of wisdom?
I don't think so. Sorry for boring everybody with science for a while.
Never apologize for that. Seriously. Dr. Jess Baker, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Holy cow, that was so much fun.